Hello and welcome to another big UC news show. My name's David Dungay. Today I'm joined by my expert panel again. I have Evan Kirstel, welcome to the show, Don Black, Zeus, Kerravala, Jon Arnold, and Craig Durr, and my co-host for today, Mr. Rob Scott. Welcome everyone to the show. So we've got some great topics to discuss today. Rob, what have we got? What have we got on the agenda?
Well, we're going to talk through some big brands and big updates, and we're going to finish on one very, very juicy story. But first of all, we said we'd just look back at some of these big events that have happened across October and into November. And the first one, David, is WebexOne, which was originally, a kind of pandemic event. It went virtual, and it's eventually and this year become a hybrid event, attracting, I think, almost 15,000 people virtually. So I think I'd love to get through the key topics and themes from the event. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So WebexOne was back in person after that sort of pandemic kind of hiatus, if you like. But it seems to have gone relatively well. Again, we've seen another AI-themed show. What is Webex doing with AI? Well, they're starting to bake it into all of their Webex hardware and products to kind of give it that seamless native integration. So it's another AI story from Webex. AI Assistant, of course, is the product we're talking about here. It's providing things like meeting summaries and suggestions around tone and phrasing for contact center agents, and a whole host of other things as well that I can't possibly go into everything right now. But shall we hand over to one of our expert panelists, Zeus? What did you take away from WebexOne? What were your thoughts on those big updates from the show?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good show this year. It was the first one they'd actually done in person since they started the event a few years ago, which, as you mentioned, did start during the pandemic. And obviously, AI, I think everybody going into a new AI would be the big theme there. What I liked about what Cisco did, though, was they used AI. And, I mean, everybody's got their virtual assistant, right? We got Copilot, Zoom AI assistant, and so we knew that was coming. I think one of the unique things about theirs, though, interesting things, is that the user doesn't have to do anything, right? If you get up and you leave and you come back, it knows you left, and the AI assistant will just pop up and says, "Hey, would you like me to catch you up?" I think that feature alone makes it a lot more usable than the user having to take an action. As long as the users have to take action, lots of them aren't going to do that. And so I think the automation that Cisco built in there not only makes it easier to use, but it makes it so the user almost has no choice since they get the value right away. More than that, though, I think Cisco really showed sort of the value of the broader Cisco with some of the AI announcements they made. One of the more interesting ones was the AI codec. And so codec, I don't know the last time we had an update on a codec, right? It's been a long time ago, but their new AI-based codec can actually give you high quality, like HD video, even with 90% packet loss. And I talked to Javid about that. And what it does is when packets are coming through, if ones are lost, because it knows what's before and what's after, it can actually infer what those middle packets were. And so that's a really, really interesting use case of AI. And again, that's an AI feature that's under the covers and invisible. People don't even know it's there, right? And it adds to the quality. They also announced their RMM. So while the world's crazy about large language models, they have real-time media models, and so they're extended it just past text to video to emotion to all these different areas. And so I thought it was a good show for Cisco. The other area they talked about AI was with their devices, right? So they formally announced a partnership with Nvidia, which I thought was interesting because I remember talking to Snora about Nvidia 8 years ago or something when the company made a bet that they were going to power all their devices with Nvidia GPUs. And I think they just felt it was time to formalize the partnership. But because the devices are loaded with all these Nvidia processors, you can do a lot of AI on the device, right? So I've got a Cisco Desk Pro here, and a lot of the virtual background and noise removal and things like that is done on device. So it offloads it from the client. And so, for instance, when Zoom first launched their noise removal, you couldn't use it on a MacBook Air because it didn't have the processing capability. but you could if you use it on a Cisco desk because it offloaded that capability. So I think my big takeaway from WebexOne is this isn't your, your father's or your, older siblings type of WebEx. And I think Cisco's biggest challenge now is just getting people to try it again. It is a very, very good platform. But just when I talk to customers, a lot of them have this old vision of what WebEx was. And I think that's probably their biggest challenge today, more so than the technology.
There were some pretty big product updates also, weren't there? We got the Bang & Olufsen earbuds. We got an Apple TV integration, is that right? And then we also got the AT&T WebEx Go launch, which I thought was all very exciting.
I'd actually like to see it do a headset partnership with something that isn't so elite, though. Like, I've got a pair of the B&Os, and they are fabulous, right? But a lot of what WebEx does with McLaren and things like that tends to be I don't want to say elite, but certainly very high end. And the B&O headsets, I think that's your corporate executives that use those. But a partnership with somebody, maybe a little down market might extend the value of that too. And it also, I think, when you think about Cisco and WebEx, they do tend to be very large enterprise focused, and I think this is something that supports it. But you're right, Rob. They had a ton of announcements there as well. They had some contact center updates as well, but most of those things did revolve around AI. So
I'd love to jump in on the contact center stuff. From my position, looking at where there's a lot of innovation coming and a huge market opportunity is in that SME contact center. And with Cisco launching the Essentials contact center at $30, very competitive. We're seeing a huge demand in the SME for better customer interactions, better customer experience. And if Cisco can start to leverage their partners to sell into that space, I think they've got a really good jump on the market. And look, it's not the only company doing that. We saw RingCentral launch RingCX down in that space. We've seen a lot of other vendors go, hey, look, maybe we don't need to sell to 500 and above agent contact centers. There is a bigger opportunity in the SME potentially to go after it. We're also seeing a lot of the UCaaS vendors and UCaaS providers going, hey, we need to add more value to our solutions. Maybe we move down market, and contact centers are a clear avenue for that as well. So yeah, really excited to see what they can do with that in the future.
Dom, I agree with you about that. One of the challenges to keep an eye on with them is Cisco in the last couple of years have done so much work to simplify their licensing model. When on-premise, and they went to flex licensing and things like that. I think we had some questions in the analyst session. So the contact center now, not only does it have that free inclusive piece, but it has the essentials piece too. So we're starting to create some tiers there. Someone asked a really insightful question because about their AI features and if there's a monetization down the road. And it was kind of left loose. I don't know if they plan on doing any type of tier like the Copilot tier, but Cisco did a lot of great work to clean up its licensing. And I think it's something really important that I hope they hold on to, going to this suite-based mentality, the model, the sales motion. I know that the CX customers are different path, and so they need to do that. I own that. And the fact that pulling some of that CX functionality into those smaller SMBs is great. It's just one of the things I'm going to be watching to see if their licensing model goes back to where it was before, if it stays with all that simplification they've been doing.
Yeah, I just want to add, adding to what Zaya said about the video codec, the speech to text is also another kind of uplift for them too, because they were showing how their accuracy, their what they call word error rate is better than everybody else's. Whether that's actually true is a hard thing to verify, but it's just showing that their emphasis on improving the mechanics, and they said it right from the top that you can't have good collaboration without good audio and video quality. And I thought that was a really fundamental thing to focus on to make that user experience really good. I just also want to amplify that I thought, to me, the contact center stuff was the bigger story because the UCaaS piece is really good, and it's more of the same, and they're solid up market there for sure. SME, not so sure. But contact center, they have a bigger bridge to cross because so much of it is prem-based. And I think they've really showed how far they've come to kind of make it a cloud-based offering that can really be competitive, because that's where the bigger payoff is for them financially. And when you talk about, the earnings call, which might come into play later in this call, the CCaaS space is really what's driving the growth. We know UCaaS has been so commodified now, and all the improvements there are great. but I think that's really going to just really help them keep pace, not grow the business the way I think the CCAS opportunity is in front of them to do. They've got to get the market to buy it, though. They've got to see that it's a better product. And aside from those earbuds, Zeus, it was really great to see them talk about the different collaboration environments that for meetings. They have this campfire set up. And I think that shows that they're listening to how the market is changing in terms of what hybrid work means today, that there are multiple room configurations you can have for collaboration, and they had offerings for all of them, and that to me underscores the importance of the hardware side of the business. And Snorri he always does such a good job articulating that, but that's great for the channel because now they have products that can actually sell, that drive some of these deals and gets them to close faster. And Cisco's very conscious of that. So a lot to like there for sure.
Yeah, and let's not forget the fact that Ilya from Microsoft showed up at WebexOne.
Yeah, did not say much, but was there.
Well, that might lead us quite nicely into our next big event. Rob, what have we got to talk about next?
Well, what have we not got to talk about? There's tons to talk about here, but let's talk about Microsoft and Microsoft Ignite 2023. It was just, last week, I recorded a show yesterday, an Ignite special, and we took the whole hour just to get through some of the Teams updates. But as you all know, Microsoft Ignite is Microsoft's big event of the year. It was very, very much Copilot focused again this time. However, they did all sorts of enhancements across Teams Phone, Teams Rooms, SharePoint Planner, all sorts of updates. So I think we should talk about some of those, certainly some of the big ones. What do you think, David?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so much information came out of Ignite that it'd be impossible to cover it all here. I do suggest you go and have a look at the summary articles on uctoday.com, and of course Rob's big roundup piece on video. We'll provide all of the links in the description below. But I do want to pick up on that, on those devices, and what does this AI story mean for these Microsoft certified devices? And I know, Craig, you've got a bit of an opinion on this. What did you take away from that from a device perspective?
Well, I'll tell you what I wanted to double click on. You're right. There was so much, and I think everyone's written about Copilot, but on the device front, which translates into how the room market and what they're thinking about in the market, there was two trends I wanted to kind of highlight that I think we should just acknowledge. So they didn't talk about it too much, but just before they had their more announcement around the IntelliFrame cloud service. This is the multi-camera, it's the multi-stream, potentially multi-camera angle. That plays towards these high-end rooms, right, with multi-cameras, and they're working with some partnerships to start bringing those out. We see vendors out there with multi-camera solutions such as Crestron, Logitech, and I think there's a couple other in the works to do other things as well. On the opposite end of that room spectrum, besides those large multi-camera rooms, there was a lot of activity around the BYOD space. Now, this is where Microsoft traditionally has kind of tried to shy away from it, had very concerted efforts to get customers off of BYOD to a native room experience. They always believed, talking about Ilya, that having the native room experience gave better end user experience, better IT management. But if you look at here, they've seemed to turn the corner on this. And there's a lot of emphasis trying to address those BYOD situations. So what do you see? They came out with an upgrade kit, a new low-cost kit with Max Hub to take BYOD solutions and turn them into a native Windows-based Teams room. On the BYOD front as well, too, they created some new feature sets. I plug in now, it automatically does dual monitor, so I'm not worried about sharing private information. And then probably the more important thing they did, which they spoke about previously, I forgot which event, maybe it was InfoComm, but they're going down this path of making BYOD rooms managed by putting a piece of Microsoft software. They had the partnership they talked about with Crestron, and I think there's some other ones coming up too. So an end user experience with this BYOD room now changes. You now have the chance to say, even though it's BYOD, you might be able to see a calendar in the room, but more importantly, it's giving IT insights into what's taking place in that room, what peripherals are there and what's going on. So the takeaway on the device front is I think you're going to start looking at them to expand on those large in rooms with the multi-camera situations. And I think they're embracing the BYOD side, which is prolific right now. I just spoke to some colleagues, came back from GITEX and Infocom India. He said all he saw was BYOD rooms across those major markets, nothing but. So I think it's good that it's embracing it and bringing it back into their IT story.
What about the 3D meetings announcement? I particularly like that one.
Oh, so their immersive meeting experiences, and then they also had one which was the mesh. I like it. It might be a generational thing. I don't see myself, I don't see Evan, I don't see Zeus or Dom putting on a headset, sitting at our desk to go into an immersive experience. Now, I do think
Actually, Craig, I think there's a lot of, it depends on the use case. I mean, we're not going to do it just to sit there and talk to each other, but Cisco's messed around with hologram, their WebEx hologram and things. And when I talk to them, the use case is if we want to interact with an object, right? If we're working for an auto manufacturer or something, and we want to take a look at a part and explode it and stuff like that. To me, that's the use case. And I think all of this is heading to the point where we can do it without a headset, right? But this is baby steps. We're not going to go from where we are today to holograms without headsets. The interim step is with a headset. So I think it's finding the right use cases, understanding how people use it, and then eventually get to that point. But I think we're years from that.
It's possible. Here's what Microsoft did slightly different. With their Microsoft Mesh interop, they made it more every day for someone to create an interactive environment. So think of a virtual event and creating a virtual lobby. So you're right. Maybe we could, if we could all go in without headsets, we could have a chance to have spatial recognition of going off to see the UC Today booth or stand, and then going over and seeing some other things. So that's interesting to add another layer to it. I think there's a lot of other noise in our industry, AI, which we're talking a lot about, other use cases, that I think this is still going to be a baby brother to some of these.
Yeah, and I do think it's generational. When I was at GITEX and I was at the Dubai Electric and Water Authority stand, they were showing like customer service in the metaverse, and John, you saw that too, right? And
It's coming. This is another topic. I do too, and I do think it's generational. And you talk about the holograph stuff. I mean, Huawei has this naked 3D where you get on your computer, you get a 3D experience without wearing any headgear, and it's coming. And the younger generation will embrace this. I have no doubt about that.
It's interesting, isn't it, that they've partnered with Meta and the Meta Quest headset to deliver this solution, which is ultimately going to make it very accessible to whatever generations have got one. But
I have a Meta Quest 3, and I must say it is not just an incremental update to the 2. It is a pretty amazing device. It's not in the Apple ProVision camp, but it is much more usable, much more interesting, and the whole quality of display and cameras a massive upgrade, Snapdragon powered. It's it's gonna shake things up in this whole space,
isn't it? I mean, looking at the Middle East now, seeing those public service examples coming through, like the water authority in Dubai, it's fantastic to see. Shall we move on to our next topic? Rob, what have we got?
Absolutely. Another event in October with countless updates was Zoomtopia. So Zoom's annual event in California was fantastic. A plethora of updates, products, and amazing to see the ecosystem grow as well. And more recently, their Zoom also put forward their Q3 earnings report, which had some very impressive numbers. What do you think, David?
Yeah, it certainly did. So let's start with the sort of the overall highlights. There was a slight year-on-year decline in revenue, about 0.4%, I think, but actually it exceeded its forecast in the UC&C product division. So Zoom Phone for me, that was the standout. 7 million paid for seats now, up 1.5 million seats in the last 12 months alone. I mean, this really shows that Zoom is not a one-time pandemic kind of flash in the pan kind of company. It means business, and it means business in the enterprise space, excuse the pun. The other sort of takeaways for me were Zoom AI Companion, 220,000 accounts there. It's done something like 2.8 million meeting summaries already. And of course, its enterprise revenues is about 7.5% increase there. So this is a great story for Zoom. I mean, I'm a big fan of Zoom right now, and how it's taking Microsoft on head to head in almost every product category it can. It's not shying away. I want to come to Dom first on this one. What are your thoughts on Zoom and its growth story today?
I think the key thing is they just continue to execute. They've continued to add products to their portfolio, but even on products like Zoom Phone, which was launched a number of years ago, they're still growing very fast on that. I think one of the challenges they may face is if you signed a 3-year contract back in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, when does that start coming up for renewal, and when do those start coming through? And I think the big question over the next year, 18 months is what happens then, and how does that impact churn there? What were those customers who are making that choice 3 years ago still in the same camp now as Zoom is going to take us forward? I think from a product portfolio perspective, they've only added to that. So I speak to a lot of people who are very happy with the Zoom experience, and adding contact center, adding AI companion to that is only going to be beneficial to keeping those customers there long term. I think, as I've said, execution on Zoom Phone, 7 million users is exceptional. You look at the other UCaaS providers in the market. Let's take Microsoft Teams out for a second. They've blown everyone out the market in terms of growth. Fantastic at what they've been achieving on that. And I think that's showing in the market. Contact center, I think there's a great opportunity there as well. We've seen some real innovation coming out through that in the Zoom analyst event and at Zoomtopia. Huge amount of focus on what they're doing there. I think that's only going to start improving the cross-sell and upsell that they're going to be able to do. And we're speaking to a lot of partners at the moment and looking at a lot of partners, not only in North America, but across Europe as well, who are looking for new platforms to take to market, and fascinated to see what they can do there. So the one area which I think you see a difference between Microsoft, Cisco, and maybe Zoom is Zoom haven't got a coherent mobile strategy at the moment. I think you see Webex launching Webex Go. You've seen Team Phone Mobile working with carriers and operators through that. Zoom haven't gone down that route yet. And speaking to them, their argument is, look, the Zoom experience is better in the app. Why do we need to bring it out to the mobile? I think it's going to be fascinating to see how mobile changes over the next 12, 18, 60 months, let's say, on the long-term outlook of where mobile plays a role in that and what Zoom are going to do around that to see if they can leverage mobile carriers' networks to offer a better experience to their customers in the long run.
Dom, I've talked to Zoom about this, including Vi Chow, who owns that piece, and we talked about it for quite a while at the analyst summit, and he's got a list of priorities, things to do, and this one's further down the list. And I've talked to customers that have looked at Webex Go, and while the concept is interesting, it does get very complicated very fast because you typically need to either own the device or own the line, right, on the device. Everyone's got to be on the same carrier. So what do you do with users that aren't in, in the Webex case, the Verizon footprint? You can do AT&T now. But there are a lot of issues that come up with trying to scale that type of mobile offering. And I suppose long term you'd be able to manage that through like Webex Control Hub or something. But I do know from a Zoom perspective, they're keeping an eye on that. I think they just feel it isn't quite ready for scalability yet, right? And so they've backburned that in favor of some of the other things that they've done, which I think actually are more important for them, right? Getting contact center right, getting phone right, and things like that. What's interesting about Zoom today, they did announce 700 contact center customers as well. For all the growth that they've had, all the products they've, Dave, you mentioned 7 million seats. This, July 1st, 2019, the stock was $94 a share. Today, I'm looking at it trading at 64. So, despite all the growth and all the extra customers and things like that, and I know the whole sector's down, but the company's actually worth less than it was pre-pandemic, which is pretty fascinating because I think the one unique asset that Zoom has that Wall Street maybe doesn't fully appreciate is users like Zoom. And so if you put Teams in, and then I've talked to a lot of companies, Teams really doesn't work well I know people think I pick on Teams, but even the most hardcore Kevin Keeler would tell you, Teams does not work well for B2B communications or outside the organization, where Zoom does. And so you'll see a lot of companies use Zoom as the alternative one because that's what users want. And I think that user affinity, I think in the long term is going to, will allow Zoom to be one of the vendors in this space that actually manage to scale and continue to grow, where I'm not so sure about, a lot of the rest of the field. So
I had a chance to speak to Kelly Stuckelberg also at Zoomtopia. And what I like is it's almost like a slogan from a movie, which is make a plan, stick to a plan, always deliver. She said, look, I've got 3 key things to help keep growth driving. Dom touched on them. Just to kind of recap it, though, it's phone is a steady, I wouldn't say it's an unsexy, steady growth for them. Contact center, and the way that they're leveraging AI as a value add for their paid service, not charging for it like the Copilot. So at the point in time of Zoomtopia, it was very head to head. What is Copilot going to be priced at? We know we're going to charge. Now it's come out that it's a combination of $30 per individual. Meanwhile, they still have their in-meeting experience as being part of the paid service. If they continue to deliver on that, I think they'll have that growth. But to everyone's point, it's not the pandemic growth darling that it was. And Wall Street needs to do a little bit of adjustment in understanding that. But if they are comfortable with that 7 or 9%, you can go back and look. I think I calculated they had like 27 quarters of growth, consecutive growth going. So there's a rationalization that Wall Street needs to do to acknowledge where Zoom is and what they're doing to grow. But it's reflecting right now on what they expect from a 2019 to 2020 growth.
And their plan has been consistent, although the quote you cited was an odd one since it ends with "throw away the plan." So,
always deliver. No. But you know what I'm saying. And you know what? But actually, Zeus, you and I were joking about this while we were there. Some of their value add, it's interesting to see if it's going to land or not. So you and I talked about Zoom Docs and the question of like, are you going head to head with Microsoft? Right. And it looks more like Notion as an application, not like Word document. But if they're willing to invest in these value adds, they may have some that may not stick. And it's curious how far down the R&D pipe they will go and spend for these value adds to continue to make their core offering, the halo of it, have more value.
Yeah, the interesting value of that too, and because I turned on Zoom Mail and I thought at first, it's another mail client, right? But the value comes in some of the AI and search capabilities, because it's pretty common that somebody will send me something in Zoom chat and send me something in email, and then I got to remember which platform it was they sent it to me in. Now that it's all on one platform, that chat works cross modes, right? And so the more they can get their customers turning on these other things, the more value they return them through AI and search and things like that. So that's an interesting challenge for them, is to and because of that, I think I kind of questioned why they were offering it for free, but I think that's the right approach, because the more adoption they get, the better it is, the kind of exponential value that the Zoom platform.
Right. Should we move on to our next one? Rob, what's next on the list?
Well, absolutely. So one of the features I love about Zoom is Zoom Clips, which was recently announced at Zoomtopia or just before. And actually, our next news item is the acquisition of Loom, which is an async video platform that was acquired for almost $1 billion by Atlassian just in the last few weeks. And I think there's a story here just to briefly discuss before we come on to our big juicy story of the month. But what do we think, David? Do we think asynchronous video, asynchronous communication is going to be back in vogue anytime soon?
Do you know what? I absolutely do. This my async journey started a few years ago with my younger nieces and nephews. They started sending me voice notes on WhatsApp, and I was like, why are you sending me voice notes? Just call me or message me. But no, they insisted this was an async conversation. You're getting a voice note. We're starting to see this creep into businesses now as well. We've been using Loom internally at UC today to really get more out of our meetings. Some meetings can move to a to an async video, for example, or it's great to prep for meetings as well. You know, if you want to digest some key information ahead of a meeting and presentation or something, you can do a quick video. So I can really see this resonating in the business world. You know, a little bit about the Loom platform. You know, it already comes with 25 million users. That's 350,000 business customers as well. They're logging a whopping 5 million video messages every month on the platform. So for me, async is here, it's coming, it's going to make up a really important part of the hybrid kind of mix. I think a lot of people have probably underestimated the value that they can get from async video. But let's hear from our expert panel on that one. Evan, you're Mr. Video. What are your thoughts on async and this acquisition?
Yeah, I was really intrigued by it. I mean, Atlassian is a perfect home for Loom, and I'm a big power user and a fan. It has a lot of very loyal customers. It's a great product, really well designed, well thought out, and it kind of humanizes, hybrid work in a way that, messaging and live video doesn't. We're honestly overwhelmed by email and messaging and video calls all day. So I think it recognizes there's a need to shift certain amounts of collaboration and communication to an asynchronous mode. And, it has all the benefits of, enhanced productivity and not being constantly interrupted, and not just for internal communications, but external communications, sales and marketing use cases. So, I think they probably have big plans for it. And they'll probably add Gen AI to make, the video more interesting and appealing and deliver it in new and fresh ways. And I was glad to see it'll be a standalone product as well as part of the Atlassian suite of products. So win-win for all parties.
There's got to be a use case for video by mail as well, hasn't there? Rather than sending an email or type.
Yeah, or send a sales prospect a personalized quick video update, much more powerful than yet another email or direct message.
Oh, I think it's useful. Imagine being a salesperson, right? You finish a sales call, you want to capture a bunch of points, get it out to the team, record it on video, send it out. I think there's lots of use cases for async video. The typing takes a long time, and I just think it's one of those things. Once you try it, you like it and use it, and that barrier to entry to getting people to try is the thing that companies need to get over. But it's very useful.
Well, Cisco's got Vidcast, so they've had that out for a while too. Zoom has their piece they're coming out with, so Microsoft. You know what, Evan, maybe you've done this. I haven't played with it. Does it send me to a landing page that's very specific to that platform? Do I need to be as part of that platform to see that video, or can I be outside of that platform?
No, it's pretty agnostic, and it's not just video, it's screen sharing. So if I have some complicated set of directions I want to send my admin, I can sort of, move my mouse and talk and screen share, as well as record my voice or video overlay. So lots of modes of operation that make it really useful.
I think that's key, because then to what was being said, it's the use cases. Not only communicating asynchronously internal to my business, but can I use that to kind of follow up less intrusively with people outside of my business as well, too, on their time frame, much like a text, much like a something else.
So to me, it's along the same spectrum of the metaverse and the virtual environments, right? The use cases are there for the right kind of applications and demographic for it. And it's one of those things. It's like Zaya said, it's faster to just speak off the cuff, and for a lot of things that does the job. So for internal communications, it's just more efficient for a lot of people. But but the thing is, if everything moves asynchronous, then no one's going to be in any meetings anymore, right? So I don't think we're going to ever get there, but it's just another tool that makes it easier to work this way. And I think it's good for some applications, but when you got to be in meetings, you got to be in meetings. And the more tools like this to make it easier for you not to be in a meeting, well, that's not what the UCAS folks want to hear. But I think it just reflects that our work styles are changing, and that's the technology that works for it. So it's going to happen. But I can see this bleeding into the metaverse space as well.
I think where I see this is what we're seeing is people are wanting to communicate in the way they want to communicate. So some people work very well with, hey, I don't want to write down, that I'm too slow at typing, or I can't get my thoughts down, so I want to record a video. And it's the same with people receiving that communication. I personally don't like receiving recorded voice calls or voice notes. A video which is 5 minutes long, I prefer a text one. I can skim read, pull the stuff out of it. I think it comes down to how do we give people the tools to be able to convey information that they want to in different ways. So things like voice notes, things like Loom being able to convey that, or messaging. But then on the other side, if we can take that down into, okay, a recorded video message can turn into a video message, an audio stream, and a text transcript of that. That there, I think, is more valuable, because you choosing video actually removes a lot of ways that other people can communicate with that. But
actually, I think, Dom, what you said that's important is it's choice, right? So we talk in the contact center space all the time about the importance of omni-channel, because it lets customers work with that brand through the channel that they prefer. Isn't this really just the same thing? I'm not going to say vidcast is going to get rid of email, but it's a choice that you want to use. Some people will continue to use mail. Some people may use the Zoom clip and async video. Other ones are going to leave voicemails, and this all comes down to give users their choice of tools, and you will see collaboration.
And what's going to be interesting too, to an earlier comment, is if and when these platforms align it with their AI strategy. So now if I have another element of information coming to me, and someone made the example of searching both chat and email, I hope I have an opportunity to do a transcript of what that vidcast is, for example, or what that Loom is, and also have the ability to pull that into a search and kind of organizing information. That's the risk. You start getting information come to you all over, trying to figure out not only within what platform, but what channel within that platform did I get that last communication from Rob or David or whoever is appropriate.
Shall we move on to our last topic of the day? It's a big one. Rob, what have we got?
Well, it can be only one thing, can't it, David? AI. And specifically, OpenAI. Now, just within the last week, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, was fired. Now, I think this caused all sorts of havoc across Silicon Valley, but it's really interesting. I want to just talk about the kind of general feeling around what happened, and also the general feeling about AI as a trend, as a kind of something that organizations are going to want more of in 2024. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is really the soap opera of our industry right now. It's been fascinating to watch. If anyone spends any time on social media, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But as you mentioned, Rob, yeah, Sam Altman was ousted by the board at OpenAI. Microsoft very quickly pounced and offered him a role to head their AI research division over there. The employees at OpenAI weren't too happy. I think 700 out of about 770 of them basically revolted and said, we're not happy with this decision. It now looks like there's been a U-turn on that, and Sam Altman might be returning to OpenAI. So this is the AI story that just keeps on giving. I'm sure by the time this goes out, there'll be another chapter to it as well. It was interesting for me though to see how Microsoft responded, and Salesforce actually. Mark Benioff put out quite an interesting tweet, just offering any employees from OpenAI that might be a bit unhappy with the situation to come and have a chat with them. These AI skills are quite clearly in demand. Whoever wins this AI race or gets out ahead, there's a lot of spoils to be had from that. So, Evan, let's go to you first. You spend a lot of time on social media. What's your take on this? It's got to be a Netflix series in the making here, right?
Well, yeah, this is basically the season finale of Game of Thrones AI edition was today. And the breaking news as of now is that Sam Altman is back. He is back as CEO of OpenAI after the 700 plus employees threatened to quit. He's been reinstated as CEO. The board that ousted him has all been fired. It's all been reconstituted. And probably the most exciting boardroom drama since Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple all those years ago. So yeah, in terms of a drama, melodrama, you couldn't ask for more. But that's sort of the Gossip Girl update from me. Maybe some of the deeper thinkers can talk about the implication for OpenAI and AI.
Well, I think of two things around that, and I love the Game of Thrones to Gossip Girl bridge that you did there. It brings to highlight governance, and this is a very unique situation that has a 501(c) public entity managing a for-profit business, and that path that took place to allow very quick decisions. It's because if you think about it, the nonprofit has a goal that says we want to make AI safe. I'm simplifying it. While a for-profit entity has a responsibility to shareholders to make money. So you've got built-in governance issues just from the top of the way this unique thing is organized. Interestingly, I was half expecting to see Microsoft be offered one of those seats, but I did not see that. So that's governance is a big thing I think that's going to be coming up here. I don't know.
I thought Microsoft was offered a seat on the board. I might be completely wrong on that, but I thought that was part of the conditions of the next step.
And actually, to bring it back around to our space in the UC space, it starts trying to expose, I think, who has dependencies on a single or a primary AI vendor. Obviously, we know about Microsoft and Copilot, and they're starting to message that they have other platforms in place, but it plays really well for someone who came out really strong like Zoom with their federated AI story as well too, saying we use multiple LLMs and we use multiple vendors. It's interesting if that continues to be the trend, less than single dependency.
I think, however, this plays out, the big winner is Microsoft, right? I mean, if no press is bad press, just all this did was it raised awareness that Microsoft opens OpenAI from everybody. I was at the gym yesterday. My trainer asked me about it, and there's no way this guy would ever have given a rat's ass about something going on at Microsoft. But that's how big this news has become. And so I think just for the evolution of AI and how it gets integrated into things, I think the more attention that's brought to this, the better, both from a regulatory standpoint, but also just from an innovation standpoint. And I think, however, I think Sam Altman being head of that company and Microsoft leaving it alone to do the things it needs to do is actually the right structure for that company. But even if they change that down the road, I think all of this leads to more innovation in industry faster, which is good for everyone.
What do people think of the readiness of our businesses for generative AI? Cisco recently relaunched a survey saying only 14% of businesses are even prepared for this kind of wave of AI. And I know Gartner released something recently also that said 55% of businesses are preparing for this. So this is this is on the mind, right? What do people think about that?
Yeah, the Zscaler actually had a similar study that said that the majority of companies are actually rushing into it because they're feeling pressure from their boards. And I do worry about that companies getting out over their skis. If you remember, even in the early days of something like chatbots, which weren't really nearly as intrusive as AI could be, companies tried them out. They were disastrous. They rolled them back, and now everybody hates them, right? I worry in this case that companies are going to rush in and use it for a bunch of things it shouldn't be used for. There are a lot of companies today that are experimenting with it. They're using it only with their IT department, places like that where the users largely understand the implications of what they're doing. All the contact center vendors have it built into it, and they're turning those features on very slowly versus what they probably could do. But then there's, companies that have them, internal initiatives. But one of the big concerns is that there's not really a lot of corporate governance around what you can use it for and what you can't use it for, right? And I do think that is a concern. And I also think that there's a lot of confusion about the difference between generative AI and ChatGPT. The analogy I've used is that you think of search, right? Google search is great for asking about the weather or things like that, but that same search box can be applied to Salesforce, and when applied to that curated data set, it gives a different set of results, right? There's also a search box on Bloomberg, Dow Jones, LexisNexis, and eventually I think we'll have a generative AI interface into everything but will apply to that curated data set. We're just not there yet, and I think we're in this weird place where companies are rushing in, and I think we're going to see some, pretty spectacular mishaps over the next few years, and that's going to be fun to watch.
So on that note, we just published it, or we're about to publish some research, 1,500 businesses around what they're doing with AI. 71% of those companies say they're developing a policy around AI, and only 25% of them allowing public AI tools to be used internally at the moment. So I think that kind of highlights that there's 71 who are developing, 30 of them who have no plans to do anything and really quite unsure of what that looks like. But everyone's kind of far behind on this. And when you speak to these enterprises about what are their fears with using AI, it's around breaking customer privacy. It's around privacy of their own data and employees using it improperly. These are all massive concerns. I think Zeus, you make a good point. This is a big challenge for businesses. Where do they even start? Do you block ChatGPT but allow Copilot? Where do they go from it? And I think the education of a lot of the businesses leaders out there have no idea really what they're supposed to be doing around this. I think when you look also at the size of companies and also the split between different regions, we see in the US a lot more focus around using AI, a lot more adoption. Across Europe, much lower. We still see a lot of hesitancy in Central Europe around what AI does, data privacy, data sovereignty, how we're going to use that. I think across the rest of the world, that's going to be a big challenge in less technologically liberal countries around how AI is used. And again, we see from AI's use case, Copilot's only available to companies above 300 employees. That's a massive challenge to try and get the vast majority of the world who work for SMBs to start using some form of AI. Where do they start? What do they do? What kind of policies are going to be put in place? At least with Copilot, there are some kind of guardrails that Microsoft is putting in place of how that can be used. Otherwise, a lot of businesses are going to go out there, take what they can. Someone's going to go a bit rogue, and who knows what's going to happen to their data in the long term.
Yeah. So I just add that, aside from this being a vendor supply side driven market right now, which it is, it's also because it's how quickly the technology is evolving. It's way faster than we can absorb it and deploy it in our organizations, but the vendors want to push it out to the market today. So there is this kind of imbalance in the market that the OpenAI story is, I think, leading us to saying, yes, without the guardrails, without policies and strategies, AI is just going to be, could be a very big mess. And on top of it, it's expensive. Like, we've not been using it long enough. It's a little bit like when you move to the cloud. There is pushback against the cloud in some circles because the ongoing costs are just getting out of control. And AI in particular, you can't just get by using the free models. You got to pay. And I think that's going to put the brakes on the application development in the next year, because they've got to be able to rationalize the benefit that they're bringing to the organization. And no one has a clear strategy yet for how to make this work, either on the supply or the demand side. So I think what we're going to see next year is a lot more kind of maybe some structure falling into place. Like at the Cisco event, Jito talked about, well, we're going to be an AI first company, but we also going to be transparent. We're going to have ethics. We're going to be responsible AI, all the things you want the vendors to say, but making it happen, that people will trust, we're still a ways away from that yet. And I think we're going to need that to kind of make people feel good about, having a much bigger push with this, because it's just going to keep evolving. There's no stopping that innovation piece.
And just to add a counterpoint to John's great point, it is the fastest growing application in history, I think, first to 100 million users faster than any application in history. And because it's being subsidized, $20 a month as a power user to ChatGPT is something I'd pay $2,000 a month for. So there's, to the community of obsessed users, and I don't know how many 100 million plus users they have now, it's just an extraordinary service or product today. And that's what has generated so much heat and excitement, is the first mass market AI service of its kind. And that's what's fueling this. So, as a power user personally, and it's so far ahead of whatever else is out there in the market, like Bard and others. So I'm just as excited as many people are.
So, certainly, well said there, Evan. I mean, I think we've been going on quite a while here, so I think I'll save our audience's attention spans a little bit. But I will say, obviously, this is a huge theme for UC today and CX today, actually. So if you are on your AI journey and you're looking to get the most out of that and see how that sort of relates to your current products and your portfolio and in your business, then make sure you keep an eye on the website for updates and further news as this sort of AI story unfolds. I think that's probably a great place to leave the discussion on today.